All right, it is coming up on 8 o'clock. So, let's settle in, get comfortable, and grab a drink, because we'll be here for a little while. Welcome back. This is our second night of reading from John Milton's Paradise Lost. So far, it's felt like the... Did you ever read The Silmarillion? The parallels are rather obvious. It's a lot of world building. It's a lot of grand cosmic place setting, and it feels like a fantasy novel's beginning, or the backstory, which, you know, I'm not trying to be edgy, but let's be real. Kinda, that's exactly what it is. So, with that out of the way, yeah, of course, let's look at getting back into it. In the two previous books of it, we saw the fall itself, the arrival of Satan's legions in hell, and their sort of deciding what comes next. And they fell upon the idea that, you know what, fighting again probably will go poorly. And then sitting down and trying to be nice will probably also go poorly. And so they hit upon the idea of, you know what, I hear this Almighty has got a new pet that he's preparing. It would be awful if something were to happen. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And so, the Morning Star has gone off to find this new world of Genesis and see what trouble he can get up to. And so, we'll go from here. Let me just get a moment. I need to get the notices out and such that we are starting, because I'm awful at this. Here's one. Here's another. And might as well repost Bluesky while we're at it. Okay. So, exactly. You have a perfectly good monkey anxiety. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Alright, so we've set the stage, we've got everything ready to go, and so let's resume from Book 3 of Paradise Lost. Hail, holy light, offspring of heaven firstborn, or of the eternal co-eternal beam, may I express thee unblamed, since God is light, and never but in unapproached light, dwelt from eternity, dwelt then in thee, bright effluence of bright essence increate. Or hear'st thou, rather pure ethereal stream, whose fountain who shall tell? Before the sun, before the heavens thou wert, and at the voice of God, as with a mantle didst invest the rising world of waters deep and dark, one from the void and formless infinite. Thee I revisit now, with bolder wing, escaped the Stygian pool, though long detained, in that obscure sojourn, while, in my flight through utter, and through the middle darkness borne, with other notes than to the Orphean lyre, I sung of chaos and eternal night, taught by the heavenly muse to venture down the dark descent, and up to reascend, though hard and rare. Thee I revisit safe, and feel thy sovereign vital lamp, but thou revisit'st not these eyes, that roll in vain to find thy piercing ray, and find no dawn. So thick a drop serene hath quenched their orbs, or dim suffusion veiled. Yet not the more cease I to wander, where the muses haunt, clear spring, or shady grove, or sunny hill, smit with the love of sacred song, but chief thee, Sion, and the flowery brooks beneath, that wash thy hallowed feet and warbling flow. Nightly I visit, nor sometimes forget those other two equalled with me in fate. So were I equalled with them in renown. Thy sovereign command, that man should find grace. Blind Thamyrus, and blind Maeonides, and Tiresias, and Phineus, prophets old, then feed on thoughts that voluntary move harmonious numbers, as the wakeful bird sings darkling, and in shadiest covert hid tunes her nocturnal note. Thus, with the year seasons return, but not to me returns day, or the sweet approach of even or morn, or sight of vernal bloom, or summer's rose, or flocks, or herds, or human face divine. But cloud instead, and ever-during dark, surrounds me, from the cheerful ways of men cut off, and for the book of knowledge fair presented with a universal blank of nature's works to me expunged and erased, and wisdom at one entrance quite shut out. So much the rather thou, celestial light, shine inward, and the mind through all her powers irradiate. There plant eyes, all mist from thence purge and disperse, that I may see and tell of things invisible to mortal sight. Now had the Almighty Father from above, from the pure empyrean where he sits, high throned above all height, bent down his eye, his own works and their works at once to view. About him all the sanctities of heaven stood thick as stars, and from his sight received beatitude past utterance. On his right the radiant image of his glory sat, his only Son. On earth he first beheld our two first parents, yet the only two of mankind in the happy garden placed, reaping immortal fruits of joy and love, uninterrupted joy, unrivaled love, in blissful solitude. He then surveyed hell, and the gulf between, and Satan there, coasting the wall of heaven on this side night, in the dun air sublime, and ready now to stoop with wearied wings and willing feet, on the bare outside of this world, that seemed firm land embosomed, without firmament, uncertain which, in ocean or in air. Him God beholding from his prospect high, wherein past, present, future he beholds. Thus to his only Son foreseeing spake, Only begotten Son, seest thou what rage transports our adversary, whom no bounds prescribed, no bars of hell, nor all the chains heaped on him there, nor yet the main abyss wide interrupt can hold. So bent he seems on desperate revenge, that shall redound upon his own rebellious head. And now, through all restraint broke loose, he wings his way not far off heaven, in the precincts of light, directly towards the new created world, and man there placed with purpose to essay, if him by force he can destroy, or worse, by some false guile pervert, and shall pervert. For man will hearken to his glozing lies, and easily transgress the sole command, sole pledge of his obedience. So will fall he and his faithless progeny. Whose fault? Whose but his own? Ingrate, he had of me all he could have. I made him just and right, sufficient to have stood, though free to fall. Such I created all the ethereal powers and spirits, both them who stood and them who failed. Freely they stood who stood, and fell who fell. Not free, what proof could they have given sincere of true allegiance, constant faith and love, where only what they needs must do appeared, not what they would, What praise could they receive? What pleasure I from such obedience paid? When will and reason also is choice, useless and vain, of freedom both despoiled, made passive both, had served necessity, not me. Therefore, as to right belonged, they so were created, nor can justly accuse their maker or their making of their fate, as if predestination overruled, their will dispossessed by absolute decree, or high foreknowledge they themselves decreed, their own revolt, not I, if I foreknew, foreknowledge had no influence on their fault, which had no less proved certain unforeknown. So without least impulse or shadow of fate, or aught by me immutably foreseen, they trespass, authors to themselves in all, both what they judge and what they choose. For so I formed them free, and free they must remain, till they enthrall themselves. I else must change their nature, and revoke the high decree unchangeable, eternal, which ordained their freedom. They themselves ordained their fall. The first sort of their own suggestion fell, self-tempted, self-depraved. Man falls deceived. By the other first, man therefore shall find grace, the other none. In mercy and justice both, through heaven and earth, so shall my glory excel. But mercy, first and last, shall brightest shine. Thus, while God spake, ambrosial fragrance filled all heaven, and in the blessed spirits elect sense of new joy ineffable diffused. Beyond compare, the Son of God was seen most glorious. In him all his Father shone substantially expressed, and in his face divine compassion visibly appeared. Love without end, and without measure grace, which uttering, thus he to his Father spake, O Father, gracious was that word which closed thy sovereign command, that man should find grace, for which both heaven and earth shall high extol thy praises, with the innumerable sound of hymns and sacred songs, wherewith thy throne encompassed shall resound thee ever blessed. Should man finally be lost, should man, thy creature late so loved, thy youngest son, fall circumvented thus by fraud, though joined with his own folly, that be from thee far, that far be from thee, Father, who art judge of all things made, and judgest only right. Or shall the adversary thus obtain his end, and frustrate thine? Shall he fulfill his malice, and thy goodness bring to naught, or proud return, though to his heavier doom, yet with revenge accomplished, and to hell draw after him the whole race of mankind, by him corrupted? Or wilt thou thyself abolish thy creation, and unmake for him what for thy glory thou hast made? So should thy goodness and thy greatness both be questioned and blasphemed without defense. To whom the great Creator thus replied, O Son, in whom my soul hath chief delight, Son of my bosom, Son who art alone, my word, my wisdom, and ineffectual might, all hast thou spoken as my thoughts are, all as my eternal purpose hath decreed. Man shall not quite be lost, but saved who will, yet not of will in him, but grace in me. Freely vouchsafed, once more I will renew his lapsed powers, though forfeit, and enthralled by sin to foul exorbitant desires, upheld by me, yet once more he shall stand on even ground against his mortal foe, by me upheld, that he may know how frail his fallen condition is, and to me owe all his deliverance, and to none but me. Some I have chosen of peculiar grace, elect above the rest. So is my will. The rest shall hear me call, and oft be warned their sinful state, and to appease betimes the incensed deity, while offered grace invites, for I will clear their senses dark. What may suffice and soften stony hearts, to pray, repent, and bring obedience due. To prayer, repentance, and obedience due, though but endeavoured with sincere intent, mine ear shall not be slow, mine eye not shut, and I will place within them, as a guide, my umpire conscience, whom, if they will hear light after light, well used but they shall obtain, and to the end, persisting, safe arrive. This my long sufferance, and my day of grace, they who neglect and scorn shall never taste, but hard be hardened, blind be blinded more, that they may stumble on and deeper fall. And none but such from mercy I exclude, but yet all is not done. Man disobeying, disloyal breaks his fealty, and sins against the high supremacy of heaven, affecting Godhead, and so, losing all, to expiate his treason hath not left, but to destruction sacred and devote. He, with his whole posterity, must die. Die he, or justice must, unless for him some other able, and as willing, pay the rigid satisfaction, death for death. Say, heavenly powers, where shall we find such love? Which of you will be mortal to redeem man's mortal crime, and just the unjust to save? Dwells in heaven, in all heaven, charity so dear. He asked, but all the heavenly choir stood mute, and silence was in heaven. On man's behalf, patron or intercessor none appeared, much less that durst upon his own head draw the deadly forfeiture and ransom set. And now, without redemption, all mankind must have been lost, adjudged to death and hell by doom severe, had not the Son of God, in whom the fullness dwells of love divine, his dearest mediation thus renewed. Father, thy word is passed. Man shall find grace, and shall grace not find means that finds her way, the speediest of thy winged messengers, to visit all thy creatures, and to all comes unprevented, unimplored, unsought. Happy for man, so coming, he her aid can never seek, once dead in sins and lost, atonement for himself or offering meet. Indebted and undone, hath none to bring. Behold me then, me for him, life for life I offer. On me let thine anger fall. Account me man, I for his sake will leave thy bosom, and this glory next to thee freely put off, and for him lastly die, well pleased. On me let death wreak all his rage. Under his gloomy power I shall not long lie vanquished. Thou hast given me to possess life in myself forever. By thee I live, though now to death I yield, and am his due. All that of me can die, yet that debt paid. Thou wilt not leave me in the loathsome grave, his prey, nor suffer my unspotted soul forever with corruption there to dwell. But I shall rise victorious, and subdue my vanquisher, spoiled of his vaunted spoil. Death his death's wound shall then receive, and stoop inglorious, of his mortal sting disarmed. I through the ample air in triumph high shall lead hell captive, maugre hell, and show the powers of darkness bound. Thou, at the sight pleased out of heaven, shalt look down and smile, while by thee raised I ruin all my foes. death last, and with his carcass glut the grave. Then, with the multitude of my redeemed, shall enter heaven, long absent, and return, Father, to see thy face, wherein no cloud of anger shall remain, but peace assured, and reconcilement. Wrath shall be no more thenceforth, but in thy presence joy entire. His words here ended, but his meek aspect, silent, yet spake, and breathed immortal love to mortal men, above which only shone filial obedience. As a sacrifice, glad to be offered, he attends the will of his great Father. Admiration seized all heaven, what this might mean, and whither tend, wondering. But soon the Almighty thus replied, O thou in heaven and earth, the only peace found out for mankind under wrath, O thou, my sole complacence. Well thou knowest how dear to me are all my works, nor man the least, though last created, that for him I spare thee from my bosom and right hand, to save, by losing thee awhile, the whole race lost. Thou therefore, whom thou only canst redeem, their nature also to thy nature join, and be thyself man among men on earth, made flesh, when time shall be of virgin seed, by wondrous birth be thou in Adam's room, the head of all mankind, though Adam's son. As in him perish all men, so in thee, as from a second root, shall be restored, as many as are restored without thee, none. His crime makes guilty all his sons, thy merit imputed shall absolve them who renounce their own both righteous and unrighteous deeds, and live in thee transplanted, and from thee receive new life. So man, as is most just, shall satisfy for man, be judged and die. And dying rise, and rising with him raise his brethren, ransomed with his own dear life. So heavenly love shall outdo hellish hate, giving to death, and dying to redeem, so dearly to redeem what hellish hate so easily destroyed and still destroys in those who, when they may, accept not grace. Nor shalt thou, by descending to assume man's nature, lessen or degrade thine own, because thou hast, though throned in highest bliss, equal to God, and equally enjoying God-like fruition, quitted all, to save a world from utter loss, and hast been found, by merit more than birthright Son of God, found worthiest to be so by being good, far more than great or high, because in thee love hath abounded more than glory abounds. Therefore thy humiliation shall exalt, with thee thy manhood also to this throne. Here shalt thou sit incarnate, here shalt reign both God and man, Son both of God and man, anointed universal King. All power I give thee, reign forever, and assume thy merits under thee as head supreme. Thrones, princedoms, powers, dominions I reduce. All knees to thee shall bow, of them that bide in heaven or earth, or under earth in hell, when thou, attended gloriously from heaven, shalt in the sky appear, and from thee send the summoning archangels to proclaim thy dread tribunal. Forthwith from all winds the living, and forthwith the sighted dead of all past ages to the general doom shall hasten. Such a peal shall rouse their sleep. Then, all thy saints assembled, thou shalt judge bad men and angels. They, arraigned, shall sink beneath thy sentence. Hell, her numbers full, thenceforth shall be for ever shut. Meanwhile the world shall burn, and from her ashes spring new heaven and earth, wherein the just shall dwell. And after all their tribulations long, see golden days fruitful of golden deeds, with joy and peace triumphing, and fair truth. Then thou thy regal sceptre shalt lay by, for regal sceptre then no more shall need. God shall be all in all, but all ye gods adore him, who to compass all this dies. Adore the sun, and honor him as me. No sooner had the Almighty ceased, but all the multitude of angels, with a shout loud as from numbers without number, sweet as from blessed voices uttering joy, heaven rung with jubilee, and loud hosannas filled the eternal regions. Lowly reverent towards either throne they bow, and to the ground with solemn adoration down they cast their crowns inwove with amaranth and gold. Immortal amaranth, a flower which once in paradise, fast by the tree of life, began to bloom, but soon for man's offense to heaven removed, where first it grew, there grows, and flowers aloft shading the fount of life. And where the river of bliss through midst of heaven rolls o'er Elysian flowers her amber stream, with these that never fade the spirits elect bind their resplendent locks enwreathed with beams, now in loose garlands thick thrown off the bright pavement that like a sea of jasper shone, empurpled with celestial roses smiled. Then, crowned again, their golden harps they took, harps ever tuned, that glittering by their side like quivers hung, and with preamble sweet of charming symphony they introduce their sacred song, and waken raptures high. No voice exempt, no voice but well could join melodious part, such concord is in heaven. Thee, Father, first they sung omnipotent, immutable, immortal, infinite, eternal King, the author of all being, fountain of light, thyself invisible, amidst the glorious brightness, where thou sittest, throned inaccessible. But when thou shadest the full blaze of thy beams, and through a cloud drawn round about thee like a radiant shrine, dark with excessive bright, thy skirts appear, yet dazzle heaven, that brightest seraphim approach not, but with both wings veil their eyes. Thee next they sang of all creation first, begotten Son, divine similitude, in whose conspicuous countenance without cloud made visible the Almighty Father shines, whom else no creature can behold. On thee impressed the effulgence of his glory abides, transfused on thee his ample spirit rests. He, heaven of heavens and all the powers therein, by thee created, and by thee threw down the aspiring dominations, thou that day thy father's dreadful thunder didst not spare, nor stop thy flaming chariot wheels that shook heaven's everlasting frame, while o'er the necks thou drovest of warring angels disarrayed. Back from pursuit thy powers with loud acclaim thee only extolled, son of thy father's might, to execute fierce vengeance on his foes. Not so on man, him, through their malice fallen, Father of mercy and grace, thou didst not doom so strictly, but much more to pity incline. No sooner did thy dear and only Son perceive thee purposed not to doom frail man so strictly, but much more to pity inclined. He to appeaseth thy wrath, and end the strife of mercy and justice in thy face discerned, regardless of the bliss therein he sat, second to thee, offered himself to die for man's offense. O unexampled love, love nowhere to be found less than divine! Hail, Son of God, Saviour of men, thy name shall be the copious matter of my song henceforth, and shall never my heart thy praise forget. nor from thy Father's praise disjoin. Thus they in heaven, above the starry sphere, their happy hours enjoy and hymning spent. Meanwhile, upon the firm opacous globe of this round world, whose first convex divides the luminous inferior orbs enclosed from chaos and the inroad of darkness, old Satan lighted walks. A globe far off it seemed, now seems a boundless continent, dark, waste and wild, under the frown of night, starless exposed, and ever-threatening storms of chaos blustering round inclement sky, save on that side which from the wall of heaven, though distant far, some small reflection gains of glimmering air less vexed with tempest loud. Here walked the fiend at large in spacious field, as when a vulture on Emmaus bred, whose snowy ridge the roving Tartar bounds, dislodging from a region scarce of prey, to gorge the flesh of lambs or yeanling kids, on hills where flocks are fed, flies toward the springs of Ganges or Hydaspes, Indian streams. But in his way lights on the barren plains of Sericana, where the Chineses drive, with sails and wind their canny wagons light. So on this windy sea of land the fiend walked up and down alone, bent on his prey. Alone, for other creature in this place, living or lifeless, to be found was none, none yet. But store hereafter from the earth up hither, like aerial vapors flew, of all things transitory and vain, when sin with vanity had filled the works of men. Both all things vain, and all who in vain things built their fond hopes of glory, or lasting fame, or happiness in this or the other life. All who have their reward on earth, the fruits of painful superstition and blind zeal, not seeking but the praise of men, here find fit retribution, empty as their deeds, all the unaccomplished works of nature's hand, abortive, monstrous, or unkindly mixed, dissolved on earth, fleet hither and in vain, till final dissolution wander here, not in the neighboring moon as some have dreamed, those argent fields more likely inhabitants, translated saints or middle spirits hold betwixt the angelical and human kind. Hither, of ill-joined sons and daughters born, first from the ancient world those giants came, with many a vain exploit, though then renowned. The builders next of Babel on the plain of Shinar, and still with vain design, new Babels had they wherewithal would build. Others came single. He who to be deemed a god leaped fondly into Aetna flames, Empedocles, and he who to enjoy Plato's Elysium leaped into the sea, Cleombrotus, and many more too long, embryos and idiots, eremites and friars, white, black, and grey with all their trumpery. Here pilgrims roam that strayed so far to seek in Golgotha him dead, who lives in heaven, and they who, to be sure of paradise, dying, put on the weeds of Dominic, or in Franciscan think to pass disguised. They pass the planets 7, and pass the fixed, and that crystalline sphere, whose balance weighs the trepidation talked, and that first moved. And now St. Peter at heaven's wicket seems to wait them with his keys, and now at foot of heaven's ascent they lift their feet, when lo, a violent cross-wind from either coast blows them transverse, 10,000 leagues awry into the devious air. Then might ye see cowls, hoods, and habits, with their wearers tossed and fluttered into rags, then relics, beads, indulgences, dispenses, pardons, bulls, the sport of winds. All these upwhirled aloft fly o'er the backside of the world, far off into a limbo large and broad, since called the paradise of fools, to few unknown long after, now unpeopled and untrod. All this dark globe the fiend found as he passed, and long he wandered, till at last a gleam of dawning light turned thitherward in haste his travelled steps. Far distant he descries, ascending by degrees magnificent, up to the wall of heaven, a structure high, at top whereof, but far more rich, appeared the work as of a kingly palace gate, with frontispiece of diamond and gold, embellished thick with sparkling orient gems. The portal shone, inimitable on earth, by model or by shading pencil drawn. These stairs were such as whereon Jacob saw angels ascending and descending, bands of guardians bright, when he from Esau fled to Padan Aram in the field of Luz. Dreaming by night under the open sky, and waking cried, "This is the gate of heaven." Each stair mysteriously was meant, nor stood there always, but drawn up to heaven sometimes, viewless. And underneath a bright sea flowed, of jasper or of liquid pearl, whereon who after came from earth failing arrived, wafted by angels, or flew o'er the lake, wrapped in a chariot drawn by fiery steeds. The stairs were then let down, whether to dare the fiend by easy ascent, or aggravate his sad exclusion from the doors of bliss, direct against which opened from beneath, just o'er the blissful seat of paradise, a passage down to the earth, a passage wide, wider by far than that of aftertimes, over Mount Sion, and, though that were large, over the promised land to God so dear, by which to visit oft those happy tribes, on high behests his angels to and fro passed frequent. And his eye, with choice regard, from Peneus, the fount of Jordan's flood, to Beersheba, where the Holy Land borders on Egypt and the Arabian shore, so wide the opening seemed, where bounds were set to darkness, such as bound the ocean wave. Satan from thence, now on the lower stair, that scaled by steps of gold to heaven gate, looks down with wonder at the sudden view of all this world at once, as when a scout, through dark and desert ways, with peril gone all night, at last, by break of cheerful dawn, obtains the brow of some high climbing hill, which to his eye discovers unaware the goodly prospect of some foreign land first seen, or some renowned metropolis with glistering spires and pinnacles adorned, which now the rising sun gilds with his beams. Such wonder seized, though, after heaven seen, the spirit malign, but much more envy seized, at sight of all this world beheld so fair. Round he surveys, and well might where he stood, so high above the circling canopy of night's extended shade, from eastern point of Libra to the fleecy star that bears Andromeda far off Atlantic seas, beyond the horizon. Then from pole to pole he views in breadth, and without longer pause, downright into the world's first region throws his flight precipitant, and wins with ease through the pure marble air his oblique way amongst innumerable stars that shone, stars distant, but nigh hand seemed other worlds, or other worlds they seemed, or happy isles, like those Hesperian gardens famed of old, fortunate fields and groves and flowery vales, thrice happy isles. But who dwelt happy there, he stayed not to inquire. Above them all, the golden sun, in splendor likest heaven, allured his eye, Thither his course he bends, through the calm firmament, but up or down, by centre or eccentric, hard to tell, or longitude. Where the great luminary, aloof the vulgar constellations thick, that from his lordly eye keep distance due, dispenses light from afar, they, as they move their starry dance in numbers that compute days, months, and years, towards his all-cheering lamp, turn swift their various motions, or are turned by this magnetic beam that gently warms the universe, and to each inward part with gentle penetration, though unseen, shoots invisible virtue even to the deep. So wondrously was set his station bright, there lands the fiend, a spot, like which perhaps astronomer in the sun's lucenter orb through his glazed optic tube yet never saw. The place he found beyond expression bright, compared with aught on earth, metal or stone, not all parts like, but all alike informed with radiant light, as glowing iron with fire. If metal, part seemed gold, part silver clear; if stone, carbuncle, most, or chrysolite, ruby or topaz, to the 12 that shone in Aaron's breastplate, and a stone besides, imagined rather oft than elsewhere seen. That stone, or like to that which here below philosophers in vain so long have sought in vain, though by their powerful art they bind volatile Hermes, and call up unbound in various shapes old Proteus from the sea, drained through a limbeck to his native form. What wonder then if fields and regions here breathe forth elixir pure, and rivers run potable gold, when with one virtuous touch the arch-chemic sun, so far from us remote, produces with terrestrial humour mixed, here, in the dark, so many precious things of colour glorious, and effect so rare? Here, matter new to gaze the devil met undazzled. Far and wide his eye commands, for sight no obstacle found here, nor shade, but all sunshine, as when his beams at noon culminate from the equator, as they now shot upward still direct, whence no way round shadow from body opaque can fall, and the air, to nowhere so clear, sharpened his visual ray to objects distant far, whereby he soon saw within ken a glorious angel stand, the same whom John saw also in the sun. His back was turned, but not his brightness hid. Of beaming sunny rays a golden tiara circled his head, nor less his locks behind, illustrious on his shoulders, fledged with wings, lay waving round. On some great charge employed he seemed, or fixed in cogitation deep. Glad was the spirit impure, as now in hope to find who might direct his wandering flight to paradise, the happy seat of man, his journey's end and our beginning woe. But first he casts to change his proper shape, which else might work him danger or delay, and now a stripling cherub he appears, not of the prime, yet such as in his face youth smiled celestial, and to every limb suitable grace diffused. So well he feigned, under a coronet, his flowing hair in curls on either cheek played, wings he wore of many a coloured plume sprinkled with gold, his habit fit for speed succinct, and held before his decent steps a silver wand. He drew not nigh unheard, the angel bright, ere he drew nigh, his radiant visage turned, admonished by his ear, and straight was known the archangel Uriel, one of the 7 who in God's presence nearest to his throne stand ready at command, and are his eyes, that run through all the heavens, or down to the earth, bear his swift errands over moist and dry, o'er sea and land. Him Satan thus accosts. Uriel, for thou of 7 spirits that stand in sight of God's high throne, gloriously bright, the first art wont his great authentic will interpreter through highest heaven to bring, where all his sons thy embassy attend. And here art likeliest by supreme decree like honor to obtain, and as his eye to visit oft this new creation round. Unspeakable desire to see and know all these wondrous works, but chiefly man, his chief delight and favor, him for whom all these his works so wondrous he ordained, hath brought me from the choirs of cherubim, thus alone wandering. Brightest seraph, tell, in which of all these shining orbs hath man his fixed seat? Or fixed seat hath none, but all these shining orbs his choice to dwell, that I may find him, and with secret gaze or open admiration him behold, on whom the great Creator hath bestowed worlds, and on him hath all these graces poured, that both in him and all things as is meet, the universal Maker we may praise, who justly hath driven out his rebel foes to deepest hell, and to repair that loss, created this new, happy race of men to serve him better. Wise are all his ways. So spake the false dissembler unperceived, for neither man nor angel can discern hypocrisy, the only evil that walks invisible, except to God alone. By his permissive will, through heaven and earth, and oft, though wisdom wake, suspicion sleeps at wisdom's gate, and to simplicity resigns her charge, while goodness thinks no ill, where no ill seems, which now for once beguiled Uriel, though regent of the sun, and held the sharpest-sighted spirit in all heaven, who, to the fraudulent impostor foul, in his uprightness answer thus returned: Fair angel, thy desire, which tends to know the works of God, thereby to glorify, the great work master leads to no excess, that reaches blame, but rather merits praise, the more it seems excess, that led thee hither from thy imperial mansion thus alone, to witness with thine eyes what some perhaps contended with report, here only in heaven. For wonderful indeed are all his works, pleasant to know and worthiest to be all had in remembrance always with delight. But what created mind can comprehend their number, or the wisdom infinite that brought them forth, but hid their causes deep? I saw when at his word the formless mass, this world's material mold, came to a heap. Confusion heard his voice, and wild uproar stood ruled, stood vast, infinitude confined, till at his second bidding darkness fled, light shone, and order from disorder sprung, swift to their several quarters hastened then the cumbrous elements, earth, flood, air, fire, and this ethereal quintessence of heaven flew upward, spirited with various forms that rolled orbicular and turned to stars, numberless, as thou seest, and how they move. Each had his place appointed, each his course. The rest in circuit walls this universe. Look downward on that globe, whose hither side with light from hence, though but reflected, shines. That place is earth, the seat of man, that light his day, which else, as the other hemisphere, night would invade. But there the neighboring moon, so call that opposite fair star, her aid, timely interposes, and her monthly round still ending, still renewing, through mid-heaven, with borrowed light her countenance triform, hence fills and empties to enlighten the earth, and in her pale dominion checks the night. That spot to which I point is paradise, Adam's abode, those lofty shades his bower. Thy way thou canst not miss, me mine requires. Thus said, he turned, and Satan, bowing low, as to superior spirits is wont in heaven, where honor due and reverence none neglects, took leave, and toward the coast of earth beneath, down from the ecliptic, sped with hoped success, throws his steep flight in many an airy wheel, nor stayed till on Nifty's top he lights. And that is the end of book 3 of Paradise Lost. Oh Christ, the next one's 24 pages. These are pretty dense. So that one was a little bit of a divergence from the first 2 books. This one was a lot more from the heavenly perspective. We saw basically a different retelling of the pre and post, and really just the timetables are weird. Time is wibbly wobbly, just not quite right there. Because we're bouncing between, we're seeing what will come as if the fall is already certain, as if the original sin has already been committed. And so it goes back and forth, weaving in betwixt the past and the present, which I guess is, appropriate for something that is above and beyond existence. Milton's own way of having a higher dimensional perspective. All right, let's go ahead and take a slightly early break. The next chapter is quite meaty, so we'll go ahead and I need to brace ourselves. I need a little bit to drink, as it was last time. There's not a whole lot of chance to stop and take a sip, so we're a little bit dry here. So, be back in just a minute, and we will continue with Book 4 of Paradise Lost. All right, we are back. I may have neglected to mute as I left. Not a big deal. All right, so let's continue now with Book 4 of Paradise Lost. Oh, for that warning voice, which he who saw the apocalypse heard cry in heaven aloud. Then, when the dragon, put to second rout, came furious down to be revenged on men, woe to the inhabitants on earth, that now, while time was, our first parents had been warned the coming of their secret foe, and scaped. Haply so scaped his mortal snare, for now Satan, now first inflamed with rage, came down, the tempter ere the accuser of mankind, to wreak on innocent frail men his loss of that first battle and his flight to hell. Yet not rejoicing in his speed, though bold, far off and fearless, nor with cause to boast, begins his dire attempt, which nigh the birth now rolling boils in his tumultuous breast, and like a devilish engine's and back recoils upon himself. Horror and doubt distract his troubled thoughts, and from the bottom stir the hell within him. For within him hell he brings, and round about him, nor from hell one step, no more than from himself can fly, by change of place. Now conscience wakes despair, that slumbered wakes the bitter memory of what he was, what is, and what must be worse. Of worse deeds, worse sufferings must ensue. Sometimes towards Eden, which now in his view lay pleasant, his grieved look he fixes sad. Sometimes towards heaven, and the full blazing sun, which now sat high in his meridian tower. Then, much revolving, thus in sighs began. O thou, that with surpassing glory crowned, lookest from thy sole dominion like the God of this new world, at whose sight all the stars hide their diminished heads, to thee I call, but with no friendly voice, and add thy name of sun, to tell thee how I hate thy beams, that bring to my remembrance from what state I fell, how glorious once above thy sphere, till pride and worse ambition threw me down, warring in heaven against heaven's matchless king. Ah, wherefore? He deserved no such return from me, whom he created what I was in that bright eminence, and with his good upbraided none. Nor was his service hard. What could be less than to afford him praise, the easiest recompense, and pay him thanks? How do? Yet all his good proved ill in me, and wrought but malice. Lighted up so high, I stained subjection, and thought one step higher would set me highest, and in a moment quit the debt immense of endless gratitude, so burdensome, still paying, still to owe, forgetful what from him I still received, and understood not that a grateful mind by owing owes not, but still pays, at once indebted and discharged. What burden then, oh, had his powerful destiny ordained me some inferior angel, I had stood, then happy, no unbounded hope had raised ambition, yet why not some other power as great might have aspired, and me, though mean, drawn to his part, but other powers as great fell not, but stand unshaken from within or from without, to all temptations armed. Hadst thou the same free will and power to stand? Thou hadst. Whom hadst thou then, or what to accuse? But heaven's free love dealt equally to all. Be then his love accursed, since love or hate to me alike it deals eternal woe. Nay, cursed be thou, since against his thy will chose freely what it now so justly rues. Me miserable, which way shall I fly? Infinite wrath and infinite despair? Which way I fly is hell, myself and hell. And in the lowest deep, a lower deep still threatening to devour me opens wide, to which the hell I suffer seems a heaven. Oh, then, at last relent. Is there no place left for repentance, none for pardon left? None left but by submission, and that word disdain forbids me, and my dread of shame. Among the spirits beneath, whom I seduced with other promises and other vaunts than to submit, boasting I could subdue the omnipotent, I, me. They little knew how dearly I abide that boast so vain. Under what torments inwardly I groan, while they adore me on the throne of hell, with diadem and scepter high advanced, the lower still I fall, only supreme in misery. Such joy ambition finds. But say I could repent, and could obtain, by act of grace, my former state. How soon would I recall high thoughts? How soon unsay what feigned submission swore? Ease would recant vows made in pain, is violent and void, for never can true reconcilement grow where wounds of deadly hate have pierced so deep, which would lead me to a worse relapse and heavier fall. So should I purchase dear short intermission, bought with double smart. This knows my punisher, therefore, as far from granting he, as I from begging peace. All hope excluded thus, behold, instead of us outcast, exiled, his new delight, mankind created, and for him this world. So farewell hope, and with hope farewell fear, farewell remorse, all good to me is lost. Evil be thou my good, by thee at least divided empire with heaven's king I hold. By thee, and more than half perhaps will reign, as man ere long in this new world shall know. Thus, while he spake, each passion dimmed his face. Thrice changed with pale ire, envy, and despair, which marred his borrowed visage, and betrayed him counterfeit, if any eye beheld. For heavenly minds from such distempers foul are ever clear, whereof he's soon aware, each perturbation smoothed with outward calm, artificer of fraud. It was the first that practised falsehood under saintly show, deep malice to conceal, couched with revenge. Yet not enough had practised to deceive Uriel once warned, whose eyes pursued him down the way he went, and on the Assyrian mount saw him disfigured, more than could befall spirit of happy sort. His gestures fierce, he marked an mad demeanor, then alone, as he supposed all unobserved, unseen, So on he fares, and to the border comes of Eden, where delicious paradise, now nearer, crowns with her enclosure green, as with a rural mound the champaign head of a steep wilderness, whose hairy sides with thicket overgrown, grotesque and wild, access denied, and overhead up grew insuperable height of loftiest shade. Cedar and pine and fir and branching palm a sylvan scene, and as the ranks ascend, shade above shade, a woody theatre of stateliest view. Yet higher than their tops the verdurous wall of paradise upsprung, which to our general sire gave prospect large into his nether empire neighbouring round, and higher than that wall a circling row of goodliest trees, loaden with fairest fruit, blossoms, and fruits at once of golden hue, appeared with gay enamelled colours mixed, on which the sun more glad impressed his beams than in fair evening cloud or humid bough. When God hath showered the earth, so lovely seemed that landscape, and of pure, now purer air meets his approach, and to the heart inspires vernal delight and joy, able to drive all sadness but despair. Now gentle gales, fanning their odoriferous wings, dispense native perfumes, and whisper whence they stole those balmy spoils, as when to them who fail beyond the Cape of Hope, and now are past Mozambique. Off at sea northeast winds blow Sabian odors from the spicy shore of Araby the blessed. With such delay, well pleased they slack their course, and many a league cheered with the grateful smell old ocean smiles. So entertained those odorous sweets the fiend, who came their bane, though with them better pleased than Asmodeus with the fishy fume that drove him, though enamoured, from the spouse of Tobit's son, and with a vengeance sent from Media post to Egypt, there fast bound. Now to the ascent of that steep savage hill Satan had journeyed on, pensive and slow, but further way found none, so thick entwined. As one continued brake, the undergrowth of shrubs and tangling bushes had perplexed all path of man or beast that passed that way. One gate there only was, and that looked east. On the other side, which when the arch-felon saw, due entrance he disdained, and in contempt at one flight bound high overleaped all bound of hill or highest wall, and sheer within, lights on his feet, as when a prowling wolf, whom hunger drives to seek new haunt for prey, watching where shepherds pen their flocks at eve in hurdled coats amid the field secure, leaps o'er the fence with ease into the fold. Or, as a thief bent to unboard the cache of some rich burgher, whose substantial doors, cross-barred and bolted fast, fear no assault, in at the window climbs, or o'er the tiles, so clomb this first grand thief into God's fold. So since into his church lewd hirelings climb, thence up he flew, and on the tree of life, the middle tree, and highest there that grew, sat like a cormorant, yet not true life thereby regained, but sat devising death to them who lived, nor on the virtue thought of that life-giving plant, but only used for prospect. What well used had been the pledge of immortality, so little knows any but God alone to value right the good before him, but perverts best things to worst abuse, or to their meanest use. Beneath him with new wonder now he views, to all delight of human sense exposed, in narrow room nature's whole wealth, yea, more, a heaven on earth, for blissful paradise of earth the garden was, by him in the east of Eden planted. Eden stretched her line from Auran eastward to the royal towers of great Seleucia, built by Grecian kings, or where the sons of Eden long before dwelt in Telassar, in this pleasant soil. This far more pleasant garden God ordained. Out of the fertile ground he caused to grow all trees of noblest kind for sight, smell, taste. And all amid them stood the tree of life, high eminent, blooming ambrosial fruit of vegetable gold, and next to life, or death, the tree of knowledge grew fast by, knowledge of good bought dear by knowing ill. Southward, through Eden, went a river large, nor changed his course, but through the shaggy hill passed underneath, engulfed. For God had thrown that mountain as his garden mold, high raised upon the rapid current, which, through veins of porous earth, with kindly thirst updrawn, rose a fresh fountain, and with many a rill watered the garden. Thence united fell down the steep glade and met the nether flood, from which his darksome passage now appears. And now, divided into 4 main streams, runs diverse, wandering many a famous realm and country, whereof here needs no account, but rather to tell how, if art could tell, how from that sapphire fount the crisped brooks, rolling on orient pearl and sands of gold, with mazy error under pendant shades ran nectar, visiting each plant, and fed flowers worthy of paradise, which not nice art in beds and curious knots, but nature boon poured forth profuse on hill and dale and plain, but both where the morning sun first warmly smote the open field, and where the unpierced shade embrowned the noontide bowers. Thus was this place a happy rural seat of various view. Groves whose rich trees wept odorous gums and balm, others whose fruit burnished with golden rind hung amiable, Hesperian fables true, if true, here only, and of delicious taste, betwixt them lawns or level downs, and flocks grazing the tender herb were interposed, or palmy hillock, or the flowery lap of some irriguous valley spread her store. Flowers of all hue, and without thorn the rose. Another side, umbrageous grots and caves of cool recess, o'er which the mantling vine lays forth her purple grape, and gently creeps luxuriant. Meanwhile murmuring waters fall down the slope hills, dispersed or in a lake, that to the fringed bank with myrtle crowned her crystal mirror holds, unite their streams. The birds their choir reply, airs, vernal airs, breathing the smell of field and grove, attune the trembling leaves, while universal Pan, knit with the graces and the hours and dance, led on the eternal spring. Not that far field of Enna, where Proserpine, gathering flowers, herself a fairer flower by gloomy Dis was gathered, which cost Ceres all that pain to seek her through the world. Not that sweet grove of Daphne by Orontes, and the inspired Castalian spring might with this paradise of Eden strive, nor that Nisaean isle, girt with the river Triton, or old Cham, whom Gentiles Ammon call, and Libyan Jove, hid Amalthea, and her florid son, young Bacchus, from his stepdame Rhea's eye. Nor where Abyssine kings their issue guard, Mount Amara, though this by some suppose true paradise under Ethiop line, by Nilus' head, enclosed with shining rock, a whole day's journey high, but wide remote from this Assyrian garden, where the fiend saw, undelighted, all delight, all kind of living creatures new to sight, and strange, too, of far nobler shape, erect and tall, godlike erect, with native honor clad in naked majesty, seemed lords of all, and worthy seemed, for in their looks divine the image of their glorious Maker shone. Truth, wisdom, sanctitude, severe and pure, severe, but in true filial freedom placed, whence true authority in men, though both not equal, as their sex not equal seemed. For contemplation he and valor formed, for softness he and sweet attractive grace. He for God only, she for God in him. His fair large front and eyes sublime declared absolute rule, and hyacinthine locks round from his parted forelock manly hung clustering, but not beneath his shoulders broad. She, as a veil down to the shoulder waist, her unadorned golden tresses wore dishevelled, but in wanton ringlets waved as the vine curls her tendrils, which implied subjection, but required with gentle sway, and by her yielded, by him best received, yielded with coy submission, modest pride, and sweet reluctant amorous delay. Nor those mysterious parts were then concealed. Then was not guilty shame, dishonest shame of nature's works, honorable, dishonorable. Sin bred, how have ye troubled all mankind with shows instead, mere shows of seeming pure, and banished from man's life his happiest life, simplicity and spotless innocence? So passed they naked on, nor shunned the sight of God or angel, for they thought no ill. So hand in hand they passed, the loveliest pair that ever since in love's embraces met, Adam, the goodliest man of men since born his sons, the fairest of her daughters Eve. Under a tuft of shade that on a green stood whispering soft, by a fresh fountain side they sat them down, and, after no more toil of their sweet gardening labour than sufficed to recommend cool zephyr, and made ease more easy, wholesome thirst and appetite more grateful, to their supper fruits they fell, nectarine fruits which the compliant boughs yielded them, sighed long as they sat recline on their soft, downy bank damasked with flowers. The savoury pulp they chew, and in the rind, still as they thirsted, scoop the brimming stream. Nor gentle purpose, nor endearing smiles wanted, nor youthful dalliance as beseems fair couple, linked in happy nuptial league. Alone as they. About them, frisking, played all beasts of the earth since wild, and of all chase in wood or wilderness, forest or den, sporting the lion ramped, and in his paw dandled the kid. Bears, tigers, ounces, pards gamboled before them. The unwieldy elephant, to make them mirth, used all his might, and wreathed his lithe proboscis close to the serpent's lie, insinuating, wove with Gordian twine his braided train, and of his fatal guile gave proof unheeded. Others on the grass crouched, and now filled with pasture gazing sat, or bedward ruminating, for the sun declined, was hasting now with prone career to the ocean isles. And in the ascending scale of heaven the stars that usher evening rose, when Satan still in gaze as first he stood, scarce thus at length speech recovered sad. Oh, hell! What do mine eyes with grief behold? Into our room of bliss thus high advanced, creatures of other mould, earth-born perhaps, not spirits, yet to heavenly spirits bright, little inferior, whom my thoughts pursue with wonder, and could love, so lively shines in them divine resemblance, and such grace the hand that formed them on their shape hath poured. Ah, gentle pair, ye little think how nigh your change approaches, when all these delights will vanish, and deliver ye to woe, and more your taste is now of joy. Happy, but for so happy ill secured, long to continue, and this high seat your heaven ill fenced, for heaven to keep out such a foe as now is entered. Yet no purposed foe to you, whom I could pity thus forlorn, though I unpitied, league with you I seek, and mutual amity, so straight, so close, that I with you must dwell, or you with me. Henceforth my dwelling haply may not please, like this fair paradise, your sense. Yet such accept your Maker's work. He gave it to me, which I as freely give. Hell shall unfold to entertain you two her widest gates, and send forth all her kings. There will be room, not like these narrow limits, to receive your numerous offspring. If no better place, thank him who puts me loth to this revenge on you who wrong me not, for him who wronged. And should I, at your harmless innocence, melt, as I do, yet public reason just, honor, and empire with revenge enlarged, by conquering this new world, compels me now to do what else, though damned, I should abhor. So spake the fiend, and with necessity the tyrant's plea excused his devilish deeds. Then from his lofty stand on that high tree down he alights, among the sportful herd of those four-footed kinds, himself now one, now other, as their shape served best his end, nearer to view his prey, and unespied, to mark what of their state he more might learn. By word or action marked, about them round a lion now he stalks with fiery glare. Then as a tiger, who by chance hath spied in some purlieu two gentle fawns at play, straight couches close, then, rising, changes oft his couchant watch, as one who chose his ground, whence rushing. Oh, hang on. Got some YouTube shenanigans and chicanery. Buys me a chance to take a sip. Okay. Looks like we're healthy now. Just need to let it catch up a little bit. No more dropped frames. Looking healthy on OBS. Alright. Let's jump back into it. whence rushing he might surest seize them both, gripped in each paw, when Adam, first of men, to first of women, Eve, thus moving speech, turned him all ear to hear new utterance flow. Sole partner, and sole part of all these joys, dearer thyself than all, needs must the power that made us, and for us this ample world, be infinitely good, and of his good as liberal and free as infinite, that raised us from the dust and placed us here, in all this happiness, who at his hand have nothing merited, nor can perform aught whereof he hath need. He who requires from us no other service than to keep this one, this easy charge. Of all the trees in paradise that bear delicious fruit, so various not to taste, that only tree of knowledge, planted by the tree of life, so near grows death to life, whate'er death is. Some dreadful thing, no doubt, for well thou knowest God hath pronounced it death to taste that tree. The only sign of our obedience left, among so many signs of power and rule conferred upon us, and dominion given over all other creatures that possess earth, air, and sea, then let us not think hard. One easy prohibition, to enjoy free leave so large to all things else, and choice unlimited of manifold delights. But let us ever praise him, and extol his bounty, following our delightful task, to prune these growing plants, and tend these flowers, which, were it toilsome, yet with thee were sweet. To whom Eve thus replied, O thou, for whom and from whom I was formed, flesh of thy flesh, and without whom am to no end my guide, and head. What thou hast said is just and right. For we to him indeed all praises owe, and daily thanks I chiefly, who enjoy so far the happier lot, enjoying thee, preeminent by so much odds. While thou, like consort to thyself, canst nowhere find, that day I oft remember, when from sleep I first awakened, and found myself reposed, under a shade on flowers, much wondering where and what I was, whence thither brought, and how. Not distant far from thence a murmuring sound of waters issued from a cave, and spread into a liquid plain, then stood unmoved, pure as the expanse of heaven. I thither went with unexperienced thought, and laid me down on the green bank to look into the clear smooth lake, that to me seemed another sky. As I bent down to look, just opposite, a shape within the watery gleam appeared. Bending to look on me, I started back. It started back, but pleased I soon returned. Pleased it returned, as soon with answering looks of sympathy and love. There I had fixed mine eyes till now, and pined with vain desire, had not a voice thus warned me. What thou seest, what there thou seest, fair creature, is thyself. With thee it came and goes, but follow me, and I will bring thee where no shadow stays. Thy coming, and thy soft embraces, he whose image thou art, him thou shalt enjoy, inseparably thine. To him shalt bear multitudes like thyself, and thence be called mother of human race. What could I do but follow straight, invisibly thus led, till I espied thee, fair indeed and tall, under a platane, yet methought less fair, less winning soft, less amiably mild, than that smooth watery image. Back I turned. Thou, following, criedst aloud, Return, fair Eve! Whom fliest thou? Whom thou fliest, of him thou art, his flesh, his bone, to give thee being I lent out of my side to thee, nearest my heart, substantial life to thee, to have thee by my side, henceforth an individual solace dear,
Part of my soul I seek thee, and thee claim my other half. With that thy gentle hand seized mine, I yielded, and from that time see how beauty is excelled by manly grace, and wisdom which alone is truly fair.
So spake our general mother, and with eyes of conjugal attraction unreproved, and meek surrender, half embracing, leaned on our first father. Half her swelling breast naked met his, under the flowing gold of her loose tresses hid. He in delight both of her beauty and submissive charms, smiled with superior love, as Jupiter on Juno smiles, when he imprints the cloud that shed mayflowers, and pressed her matron lip with kisses pure. Aside the devil turned for envy, yet with jealous leer malign eyed them askance, and to himself thus plained. Sight hateful, sight tormenting, thus these two, imparadised in one another's arms, the happier Eden, shall enjoy their fill of bliss on bliss, while I to hell am thrust, where neither joy nor love, but fierce desire, among other torments not the least, still unfulfilled with pain of longing pines. Let me not forget what I have gained from their own mouths. All is not theirs, it seems. One fatal tree there stands, of knowledge called, forbidden them to taste, knowledge forbidden, suspicious, reasonless. Why should their lord envy them that? Can it be sin to know? Can it be death? And do they only stand by ignorance? Is that their happy state? The proof of their obedience and their faith? O fair foundation laid whereupon to build their ruin! Hence I will excite their minds with more desire to know, and to reject envious commands invented with design to keep them low, whom knowledge might exalt, equal with gods. Aspiring to be such, they taste and die. What likelier can ensue, but first with narrow search I must walk round this garden, and no corner leave unspied. A chance, but chance may lead where I may meet some wandering spirit of heaven by fountain side, or in thick shade retired, and from him to draw what further would be learned. Live while ye may, yet, happy pair, enjoy, till I return, short pleasures, for long woes are to succeed. So saying, his proud step he scornful turned, but with sly circumspection, and began through wood, through waste, o'er hill or dale his roam. Meanwhile, in utmost longitude, where heaven with earth and ocean meets, the setting sun slowly descended, and with a right aspect against the eastern gate of paradise levied his evening rays. It was a rock of alabaster, piled up to the clouds, conspicuous far, winding with one ascent accessible from earth, one entrance high. The crest was craggy cliff that overhung still as it rose, impossible to climb. Betwixt these rocky pillars Gabriel sat, chief of the angelic guards awaiting night. About him exercised heroic games the unarmed youth of heaven, but nigh at hand, celestial armory, shields, helms, and spears hung high, with diamond flaming, and with gold. Thither came Uriel, gliding through the even of a sunbeam, swift as a shooting star, in autumn thwarts the night, when vapors fired impressed the air,
and shows the mariner from what point of his compass to beware impetuous winds. He thus began in haste: Gabriel, to see thy course by lot hath given charge and strict watch, that to this happy place no evil thing approach or enter in. This day at height of noon came to my sphere a spirit, zealous as he seemed to know more of the Almighty's works, and chiefly man, God's latest image. I described his way, bent on all speed, and marked his airy gait. But in the mount that lies from Eden north, where he first lighted, soon discerned his looks alien from heaven. With passions foul obscured, mine eye pursued him still, but under shade lost sight of him. One of the banished crew, I fear, hath ventured from the deep to raise new troubles. Him thy care must be to find. To whom the winged warrior thus returned: Uriel, no wonder if thy perfect sight amid the sun's bright circle where thou sitt'st see far and wide. Yet at this gate none pass, the vigilance here placed, but such as come well known from heaven, and since meridian hour no creature thence, if spirit or other sort, so minded have o'erleaped these earthly bounds on purpose. Hard thou knowest it to exclude spiritual subsistence with corporal bar. But if within the circuit of these walls, in whatsoever shape he lurk, of whom thou tellest by morrow dawning, I shall know. So promised he, and Uriel to his charge returned on that bright beam, whose point now raised bore him slope downward to the sun now fallen beneath the Azores. Whether the prime orb, incredible how swift, had thither rolled diurnal, or this volubile earth, by shorter flight to the east, had left him there, arraying with reflected purple and gold the clouds that on his western throne attend. Now came still evening on, and twilight grey had in her sober livery all things clad. Silence accompanied, for beast and bird they to their grassy couch, these to their nests were slunk. All but the wakeful nightingale, she all night long her amorous descant sung. Silence was pleased. Now glowed the firmament with living sapphires. Hesperus, that led the starry host, rode brightest, till the moon, rising in clouded majesty at length, apparent queen, unveiled her peerless light, and o'er the dark her silver mantle threw. When Adam thus to Eve, fair consort, the hour of night, and all things now retired to rest, mind us of like repose, since God hath set labor and rest, as day and night, to men successive, and the timely dew of sleep, now falling with soft slumbrous weight, inclines our eyelids. Other creatures all day long rove idle, unemployed, and less need rest. Man hath his daily work of body or mind appointed, which declares his dignity, and the regard of heaven on all his ways, while other animals unactive range, and of their doing God makes no account. Tomorrow, ere fresh morning streak the east with first approach of light, we must be risen, and at our pleasant labor to reform yon flowery arbors, yonder alleys green, our walk at noon, with branches overgrown that mock our scant manuring, and require more hands than ours to lop their wanton growth.
those blossoms also, and those dropping gums that lie bestrown, unsightly and unsmooth, ask riddance, if we mean to tread with ease. Meanwhile, as nature wills, night bids us rest. To whom thus Eve, with perfect beauty adorned, my author and disposer, what thou bidst unargued I obey. So God ordains. God is thy law, thou mine. To know no more is woman's happiest knowledge, and her praise. With thee conversing I forget all time, all seasons and their change, all please alike. Sweet is the breath of morn, her rising sweet, with charm of earliest birds, pleasant the sun, when first on this delightful land he spreads his orient beams on herb, tree, fruit, and flower. Glistering with dew, fragrant the fertile earth after soft showers, and sweet the coming on of grateful evening mild. Then silent night. With this her solemn bird, and this fair moon, and these the gems of heaven her starry train. But neither breath of morn, when she ascends with charm of earliest birds, nor rising sun, on this delightful land, nor herb, fruit, flower, glistering with dew, nor fragrance after showers, nor grateful evening mild, nor silent night with her solemn bird, nor walk by moon or glittering starlight, without thee is sweet. But wherefore all night long shine these? For whom this glorious sight, when sleep hath shut all eyes? To whom our general ancestor replied, Daughter of God and man, accomplished Eve, these have their course, to finish round the earth by morrow evening, and from land to land, in order though the nations yet unborn, ministering light prepared, they set and rise, lest total darkness should by night regain her old possession, and extinguish life in nature and all things, which these soft fires not only enlighten, but with kindly heat of various influence foment and warm, temper or nourish, and in part shed down their stellar virtue on all kinds that grow on earth, made hereby apter to receive perfection from the sun's more potent ray. These then, though unbeheld in deep of night, shine not in vain, nor think, though men were none, that heaven would want spectators. God want praise. Millions of spiritual creatures walk the earth unseen, both when we wake and when we sleep. All these with ceaseless praise his works behold, both day and night. How often from the steep of echoing hill or thicket have we heard celestial voices to the midnight air, sole or unresponsive each to other's note, singing their great Creator, oft in bands while they keep watch, or nightly rounding walk, with heavenly touch of instrumental sounds in full harmonic number joined, their songs divide the night, and lift our thoughts to heaven. Thus talking, hand in hand alone they passed, on to their blissful bower. It was a place chosen by the sovereign planter, when he framed all things to man's delightful use. The roof of the thickest covert was interwoven shade, laurel and myrtle, and what higher grew of firm and fragrant leaf on either side? Acanthus, and each odorous bushy shrub, fenced up the verdant wall, each beauteous flower, iris all hues, roses and jessamine, reared high their flourished heads between, and wrought mosaic. Underfoot the violet, crocus, and hyacinth, with rich inlay, broidered the ground, more coloured than with stone, of costliest emblem. Other creature here, bird, beast, insect, or worm, durst enter none. Such was their awe of man. In shadier bower, more sacred and sequestered, though but feigned, Pan or Sylvanus never slept, nor nymph nor faunus haunted. Here, in close recess, with flowers, garlands, and sweet-smelling herbs, espoused Eve decked first her nuptial bed, and heavenly choirs the Hymenaeans sung. What day the genial angel to our sire brought her in naked beauty more adorned, more lovely than Pandora, whom the gods endowed with all their gifts, and oh, too like in sad event, when to the unwiser son of Japhet, brought by Hermes, she ensnared mankind with her fair looks, to be avenged on him who had stole Jove's authentic fire. Thus, at their shady lodge arrived, both stood, both turned, and under open sky adored the God that made both sky, air, earth, and heaven, which they beheld, the moon's resplendent globe and starry pole. Thou also madest the night, Maker omnipotent, and thou the day, which we in our appointed work employed, have finished, happy in our mutual help and mutual love, the crown of all our bliss. Ordained by thee, and this delicious place for us too large, where thy abundance wants partakers, and uncropped falls to the ground. But thou hast promised from us too a race to fill the earth, who shall with us extol thy goodness infinite, both when we wake and when we seek, as now, thy gift of sleep. This said unanimous, and other rites, observing none, but adoration pure, which God likes best, into their inmost bower, handed they went, and eased the putting off these troublesome disguises which we wear. Straight side by side were laid, nor turned, I ween, Adam from his fair spouse, nor Eve the rites mysterious of connubial love refused. Whatever hypocrites austerely talk of purity and place and innocence, defaming as impure what God declares pure and commands to some, leaves free to all, our Maker bids increase. Who bids abstain but our destroyer, foe to God and man? Hail, wedded love, mysterious law, true source of human offspring, sole propriety, in paradise, of all things common else. By thee adulterous lust was driven from men, among the bestial herds to range, by thee founded in reason, loyal, just, and pure, relations dear, and all the charities of father, son, and brother first were known. Far be it that I should write thee sins or blame, or think thee unbefitting holiest place, perpetual fountain of domestic sweets, whose bed is undefiled and chaste, pronounced present or past as saints and patriarchs used. Here love his golden shafts employs, here lights his constant lamp and waves his purple wings, reigns here and revels, not in the bought smile of harlots, loveless, joyless, unendeared, casual fruition, nor in court amours, mixed dance or wanton mask or midnight ball or serenade, which the starved lover sings to his proud fair, best quitted with disdain. These, lulled by nightingales, embracing, slept, and on their naked limbs the flowery roof showered roses, which the morn repaired. Sleep on, blessed pair, and oh, yet happiest, if ye seek no happier state, and know to know no more. Now had night measured, with her shadowy cone, halfway uphill this vast sublunar vault, and from their ivory port the cherubim, forth issuing at the accustomed hour, stood armed to their night watches in warlike parade, when Gabriel to his next in power thus spake: Uziel, half these draw off, and coast the south,
with strictest watch. These other wheel the north. Our circuit meets full west, as flame they part. Half wheeling to the shield, half to the spear. From these two strong and subtle spirits he called that near him stood, and gave them thus in charge. Ithuriel and Zephon, with winged speed, search through this garden, leave unsearched no nook, but chiefly where those two fair creatures lodge. Now laid perhaps asleep, secure of harm. This evening from the sun's decline arrived, who tells of some infernal spirit seen hitherward bent, who could have thought escaped the bars of hell on errand bad, no doubt. Such, where ye find, seize fast, and hither bring. So saying, on he led his radiant files. Dazzling the moon, these to the bower direct, in search of whom they sought. Him there they found, squat like a toad, close at the ear of Eve, assaying by his devilish art to reach the organs of her fancy, and with them forge illusions as he list, phantasms and dreams, or if, inspiring venom, he might taint the animal spirits, that from pure blood arise like gentle breaths from rivers pure, thence raise at least distempered, discontented thoughts, vain hopes, vain aims, inordinate desires, blown up with high conceits, engendering pride. Him thus intent, Ithuriel with his spear touched lightly, for no falsehood can endure touch of celestial temper, but returns of force to its own likeness. Up he starts, discovered in surprise, as when a spark lights on a heap of nitrous powder, laid fit for the ton of some magazine to store against a rumored war the smutty grain. With sudden blaze diffused inflames the air, so started up in his own shape the fiend. Back stepped those two fair angels, half amazed, so sudden, to behold the grisly king. Yet thus, unmoved with fear, accost him soon. Which of those rebel spirits adjudged to hell comest thou, escaped thy prison, and transformed? Why satst thou like an enemy in wait, here, watching at the head of these that sleep? Know ye not then, said Satan, filled with scorn, know ye not me? Ye knew me once no mate, for you, there sitting where ye durst not soar. Not to know me argues yourselves unknown, the lowest of your throng. Or, if ye know, why ask ye, and superfluous begin your message, like to end as much in vain? To whom thus Zephon, answering scorn with scorn, think not, revolted spirit, thy shape the same, or undiminished brightness to be known, as when thou stoodest in heaven upright and pure, that glory then, when thou no more wast good, departed from thee, and thou resemblest now thy sin, and place of doom obscure and foul. But come, for thou be sure shalt give account to him who sent us, whose charge is to keep this place inviolable, and these from harm. So spake the cherub, and his grave rebuke, severe in youthful beauty, added grace invincible. Abashed, the devil stood, and felt how awful goodness is, and saw virtue in her shape, how lovely, saw and pined his loss. But chiefly, to find here observed his lustre visibly impaired, yet seemed undaunted. If I must contend, said he, best with the best, the sender, not the sent, or all at once, more glory will be won, or less be lost. Thy fear, said Zephon bold, will save us trial, what the least can do. Single against the wicked, and thence weak. The fiend replied not, overcome with rage, but like a proud steed reined, went haughty on, champing his iron curb, to strive or fly. He held it in vain,
awe from above had quelled his heart, not else dismayed. Now drew they nigh the western point, where those half-rounding guards just met, and closing stood in squadron joined, awaiting next command, to whom their chief, Gabriel, from the front thus called aloud, "O friends! I hear the tread of nimble feet hasting this way, and now by glimpse discern Ithuriel and Zephon through the shade. And with them comes a third of regal port, but faded splendor wan, who by his gait and fierce demeanor seems the Prince of Hell. Not likely to part hence without contest. Stand firm, for in his look defiance lures." He scarce had ended, when those two approached, and brief related whom they brought, where found, how busied, in what form and posture couched. To whom with stern regard thus Gabriel spake, "Why hast thou, Satan, brought the bounds prescribed to thy transgressions, and disturbed the charge of others, who approve not to transgress by thy example, but have power and right to question thy bold entrance on this place, employed, it seems, to violate sleep, and those whose dwelling God hath planted here in bliss?" To whom thus Satan with contemptuous brow, "Gabriel, thou hadst in heaven the esteem of wise, and such I held thee, but this question asked puts me in doubt. Lives there who loves his pain? Who would not, finding way, break loose from hell? Though thither doomed, thou wouldst thyself, no doubt, and boldly venture to whatever place farthest from pain, where thou mightest hope to change torment with ease, and soonest recompense dole with delight, which in this place I sought. To thee no reason, who knowest only good, but evil hast not tried, and wilt object. His will who bounds us, let him surer bar his iron gates, if he intends our stay in that dark durance." Thus much what was asked, the rest is true. They found me where they say, but that implies not violence or harm. Thus he in scorn. The warlike angel moved, disdainfully, half smiling, thus replied, "O loss of one in heaven to judge of wise, since Satan fell, whom folly overthrew, and now returns from his prisons escaped, gravely in doubt whether to hold them wise or not, who ask what boldness brought him hither, unlicensed from his bounds in hell prescribed. So wise he judges it to fly from pain, however, and to escape his punishment. So judge thou still, presumptuous, till the wrath which thou incurrest by flying meet thy flight sevenfold, and scourge that wisdom back to hell, which taught thee yet no better, that no pain can equal in anger infinite provoked. But wherefore thou alone? Wherefore with thee came not all hell broke loose? Is pain to them less pain, less to be fled? Or thou than they, less hardy to endure? Courageous chief, the first in flight from pain! Hadst thou alleged to thy deserted host this cause of flight, thou surely hadst not come sole fugitive. To which the fiend thus answered, frowning stern, "Not that I less endure, or shrink from pain, insulting angel. Well thou knowest I stood thy fiercest, when in battle to thy aid the blasting volleyed thunder made all speed, and seconded thy else not dreaded spear. But still thy words at random as before argue thy inexperience what behooves, from hard assays and ill successes past, a faithful leader, not to hazard all through ways of danger by himself untried. Therefore I alone first undertook to wing the desolate abyss, and spy this new created world, whereof in hell fame is not silent. here, in hope to find better abode, and my afflicted powers to settle here on earth, or in mid-air. Though for possession put to try once more what thou and thy gay legions dare against, whose easier business were to serve their lord high up in heaven with songs to hymn his throne, and practice distances to cringe, not fight, to whom the warrior angel soon replied, to say, and straight unsay, pretending first wise to fly, paying, professing next the spy, argues no leader, but a liar traced. Satan, and couldst thou faithful add, O name, O sacred name of faithfulness profaned? Faithful to whom? To thy rebellious crew? Army of fiends, fit body to fit head. Was this your discipline and faith engaged? Your military obedience to dissolve allegiance to the acknowledged power supreme? And thou, sly hypocrite, who now wouldst seem patron of liberty, who more than thou once fawned and cringed and servilely adored heaven's awful monarch, wherefore but in hope to dispossess him, and thyself to reign? But mark what I arede thee now, avaunt! Fly neither whence thou fledst, if from this hour within these hallowed limits thou appear. Back to the infernal pit I drag thee chained, and seal thee so, as henceforth not to scorn the facile gates of hell too slightly barred. So threatened he, but Satan to no threats gave heed, but waxing more in rage replied, Then when I am thy captive, talk of chains, proud limitary cherub. But ere then, far heavier load thyself expect to feel from my prevailing arm, though heaven's king ride on thy wings, and thou with thy compeers used to the yoke drawest his triumphant wheels in progress through the road of heaven star-paved. While thus he spake, the angelic squadron bright turned fiery red, sharpening in mooned horns their phalanx, and began to hem him round with ported spears, as thick as when a field of Sarah's ripe for harvest waxing bends her bearded grove of ears. Which way the wind sways them, the careful ploughman doubting stands, left on the threshing floor his hopeless sheaves proved chaff. On the other side, Satan, alarmed, collecting all his might, dilated stood, like Tenerife or Atlas unremoved. His stature reached the sky, and on his crest sat horror plumed. Not wanted in his grasp what seemed both spear and shield, now dreadful deeds might have ensued, nor only paradise in this commotion, but the starry cope of heaven perhaps, or all the elements at least had gone to rack, disturbed and torn with the violence of this conflict, had not soon the Eternal, to prevent such horrid fray, hung forth in heaven his golden scales, yet seen betwixt Astraea and the scorpion sign, wherein all things created first he weighed, the pendulous round earth with imbalanced air in counterpoise now ponders all events. Battles and realms, in these he put two weights, the sequel each of parting and of fight. The latter quick flew up and kicked the beam, which Gabriel, spying, thus bespake the fiend, Satan, I know thy strength, and thou knowest mine, neither our own but given. What folly, then, to boast what arms can do, since thine no more than heaven permits, nor mine, though doubled now, to trample thee as mire. For proof, look up, and read thy lot in yon celestial sign. Where thou art weighed, and shown how light, how weak, if thou resist. The fiend looked up, and knew, his mounted scale aloft, no more, but fled murmuring, and with him fled The Shades of Night. And that brings us to the end of Book 4 of Paradise Lost. And that gets us to about a third of the way through. So we've got a fair bit left ahead of us. And it is ever dense. Always dense. Good Lord. There are certain parts where it's fun to play out. Yeah, the angels were getting pretty petty there. Gabriel had a few good points, to which Satan's counterpoints were also very good. So it's like, okay, they're actually having some back and forth banter there. But the lesser angels were kind of, yeah. They're a little outclassed there, for sure. All right, so we've gone a little overtime. Yeah, this is an interesting read. It's an ambitious read. It's very dense. The language is nice and flowery. It's probably decent to listen to without intending to really take it in, just to hear the ebb and the flow. But to try and really absorb it all, probably not the best sort of book to be narrated and try and get a whole lot of retention. This is one that would probably require a little bit of actual semi-study and rereading. Yeah, exactly. If not adequately barred, I would just walk out of hell too. But yeah, it's this is a choice. I do like that we're taking this one on. It's a nice work to tackle. I've never actually read it before. And seeing the images that it conjures, I can think of the different references and different works that are inspired by this, or sometimes directly adapted from this. So it is a nice way to ground things and think, okay, yeah, this is the scene that was in this music video. This is the scene that was in this game. Like that, the turns of phrases that we're seeing that were first used in here are like, said the thing, hurrah, hurrah. Yeah, it's it's not struggling so far, but I could definitely understand if people were having trouble. It's very seemingly highbrow. And when there are certain points when the nature of it, I mean, obviously this is intended to be a very religious text, very grounded in the ideas and conventions and things that are set down. So there are times when that is very blatant. And other times when it feels like they're fantasy characters interacting. So there's both bits. When Milton gets up on a soapbox, it's very in your face about it. But as soon as he gets off the soapbox and stops preaching and just starts telling a story, you're right, it's religious fan fiction. So it's interesting. And when you take it with a grain of salt like that, and understand that sometimes he's going to be preaching at you. And if you can just either tune that out or put it in context, it's actually just kind of a fun and cool little read. You can take the characters' motivations as they are, because even the angels are very human in their motivation. They're a little... They're true believers. They are neck deep in the Kool-Aid, but they're angels. They're supposed to be. Meanwhile, Satan is the bit of free will, the first bit of free will that we've seen. I don't think we read any of it in high school. It may have been that this was a little much for public school. Although we did read things like Scarlet Letter and Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God and things like that. So it stands on its own literary chops.
But this was, I don't know, I guess we didn't read a whole lot of European fiction then. So that could have been a lot of it. That or there was too many other things and it just never came up in curriculum. All right, well, we have run a little over time. Thank you very much for sitting with us. We will pick this back up tomorrow. We've got another longish section tomorrow. The next one looks like it's about 21 pages on the next section. Then let me actually see. So there are 12 books altogether. And if we manage to get 2 per, it'll get us about 6 days through to finish, which is a good pace, honestly. So we may run a little over on a couple of these nights because it seems like getting 2 books per night is a little ambitious. But it feels like a good pacing. And I don't mind running over every once in a while. We've definitely ended short a few times, so the flip side is certainly welcome. All right, I need to get some water in me, though. So let's go ahead and wrap up here for the evening. Thank you very much for joining me. If you have not yet, I encourage you to drop a like on the stream, do a subscription to the channel, let the YouTube algorithm know that we're doing fun things that are of value, and maybe it'll send us some more friends. And with that, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, and we will be back tomorrow, and when we continue Paradise Lost. Bye now.